Hi. So I'm here. I want to do this video to answer kind of a common question, even a question that I had when I was younger in the art, and probably lots of young people have, is why don't you see kung fu fighters in the ring anymore? I think you saw them a little bit back in the day, and why, whenever you do see kung fu fighters in the ring, why do they always lose? One of my students just said to me, it's because you can't hit people in the eye. And technically that's true. And I'm very happy for that rule. I wouldn't watch, and I really don't watch it anyway, but I wouldn't watch any kind of fighting sport where you're allowed to dig out an opponent's eye. I think that's way past brutal. I think most of the stuff on TV is way past brutal. But that's not the point. The point is, I know Kung Fu works. I've been doing it for a long, long time. I have students that do it. I have had students defend themselves in real life situations. But whenever someone gets in the ring and they're a Kung Fu practitioner, they always seem to lose. And after lots of meditation and thought on this, I've figured out why. The main reason why Kung Fu fighters lose in the ring is because they're not training for ring fighting. 3/4 of what we train in this art and in any other Kung Fu system and style isn't usable in the ring. That does not mean it's not usable in real life. I can assure you it is. It's very useful for real life, it's very useful for maintaining peace in your life, and it's great for self-defense, but that's exactly the point. Training for self-defense and training for the ring are two different things, and we did a whole blog on this a while back explaining kind of what the differences were. But why do you always see the Kung Fu guys lose? Because you can't kick a guy in the testicles, you can't kick a guy in the groin, essentially. And that's one of the first things you learn when you come into Kung Fu. And we emphasize that kicking a guy in the groin so much, kicking a guy in the crotch, whatever you want to call it, but we're hitting that guy, hundreds of times. We train that kick hundreds of times. If you get into the ring, that kick is useless, not because it's actually useless, but because it's not allowed. We train knife hand strikes. We spend hours developing knife hand strikes, which you cannot use in the ring, to my knowledge. You can't use any open hand strikes. And not for good reason. They're extremely dangerous, and accidents can happen. You can break your fingers, or you can rip out a person's eye, or you can kill someone with an open hand strike. So always closed fist. But that cuts out half of your Kung Fu training. And then some kicks, like in the UFC, they have a rule you can't do a reverse roundhouse to the back of the kidney. Well, it's one of our more common kicks, one of our more powerful kicks. You can't do a downward elbow. Well, that's the second elbow that we teach someone here. So is a downward elbow. So there's just hundreds and hundreds of Kung Fu hours that are actually useful and very dangerous. And the reason why you don't see it in the ring is because it's actually not allowed. It's against the rules, and you would get kicked out for using it. It doesn't mean that you can automatically... So if Kung Fu is such a great martial arts system, why can't you automatically win in a ring fight? Because if you're thinking like a ring fighter, 3/4 of what you're going to be thinking firstly is like, oh, I can't use knife hands. Oh, I can't do that kick. Oh, I can't do that move. And also, we train without gloves, and that changes blocking. You ever see boxers block? They block like this. If you block like this without gloves against a bare fist, it's going to break the back of your hand, and then your punches are useless. You always want... Well, in Kung Fu, we use the palms of our hands, we use the wrist, the forearm. We very rarely... we're never really blocking with the back of the hand except for in special circumstances, but almost never blocking with the back of the hand. And when we do, we're doing a very different block. The gloves also change the style of attack that you do. You have to be a lot more aggressive. You have to punch straighter. You have to get through the gloves. And of course that can be dangerous. But again, if you're thinking like a Kung Fu or like a ring fighter, if you're a Kung Fu trained person, you're thinking like a ring fighter, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because you're like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this. And you don't have any training for that. And neither do I. I have a little bit of training for that, but very little. And it's nothing compared to the professionals at their craft. But it's a sport. I want to emphasize it's a sport. It's not the same as real, live self-defense training. And also, they're going to be very, very fit because of they have to do 3-minute extreme bursts, and then they get a rest. In self-defense, we train to have a constant flow of high energy, maybe not as high as them, but very high energy. And we train to stay calm, focused, and precise, because that's what's going to win. Because there's no armor on the street. If a person walks up to you wearing hockey pads, don't get in a fight with them. And that's the other thing too, is like there's so many more options, so many more things can happen in a fight than can happen in a ring. Someone can grab a weapon, and then what kind of trouble do you have? Even if they just use the back of this or anything could be a weapon. I could use this credit card machine as a weapon, or the pens, the pencils, the desk, you rotate over the desk. And that's something that ring fighting just isn't going to train you for. It's not going to give you that three-dimensional perspective. And it's not going to teach you how to deal with someone who's being aggressive but hasn't hit you yet, and many of the other things. I guess I'm just going to leave that there for now. Hopefully it looks good in the shot. But there's just a ton of things. What I liken it to is it's two different games, okay? If you get into a fight with a boxer, just kick them. They don't train to protect their groin. Neither do half of the ring fighters out there, because groin kicks are illegal. But we train groin kicks hundreds and hundreds of times. You get into a fight with a real boxer, use a groin kick. You get into a fight with an MMA fighter, use a knife hand. They're not prepared for knife hands. They're not expecting knife hands. They're not expecting, well, they might be expecting elbows and knees, but they're not expecting groin kicks, knife hands, 3/4 of the things that we actually use. Doesn't mean that you're an automatic win either. Don't think that just because I trained you in Kung Fu and as long as you break all the rules and you don't follow their rules, you fight on your terms, you're automatically going to win. But you have a much better odds fighting on your terms. Don't try, if you meet a boxer, don't try to fight them like a boxer. You're a Kung Fu person, you're a Kung Fu student, use Kung Fu. All right? Use the actual Kung Fu. And that's what you see when you see these Kung Fu fighters in the ring. They're fighting on their turf, in their rules, and they always lose. But the simple fact of the matter is, I don't think a lot of those good fighters would always lose if there was no rules. If it was just a street fight in the middle of the street, it'd be a lot different. Kung Fu fighters do well in street fights because that's the environment we train for, and ring fighters do well in the ring because that's the environment they train for. If you're a gamer, I liken it to playing Halo to get good at Call of Duty. You're never gonna, no matter how many hundreds of hours you put into Halo, you're never gonna be better at your friend at Call of Duty. It's like, oh man, I've played so much Halo, I'm gonna destroy you at Call of Duty. No, and I know this because I've put a few hundred hours into Halo, and I've gone over to my friend's house, played Call of Duty, and just got wasted. First minute out, 2 minutes out, bang, which one, X, circle, square, are those even buttons? Come on, right? And that's the same thing. If you get into a ring fight, boxing, whatever, you're following rules, you're going to be in some pretty serious trouble because you're not training for that. If you're training Kung Fu, you're training Kung Fu, and it's for health, and it's for happiness, and it's for peace, it's for making your world better and your life better, but it's not for winning ring fights. So don't think you can just, oh, I'm going to step into the ring because I have a black belt in Kung Fu and win. You're going to do really good in a street fight, which you shouldn't be in anyway. You're going to do even better in self-defense because you're going to have 9 different ways to not even be in a fight before you even start to fight, which you have extensive training for. And you're going to have a much happier life because you're not going to be in those kinds of situations, and you'll have training ahead of time to be able to avoid it. But my black belts, I love them a lot, and I think some of them would do okay in the ring, even because they probably would just break the rules. They would probably just break all the rules. But ultimately, I don't think Kung Fu black belts are going to go in and start winning championships and stuff like that because it's just not the training. This is an art form. What they do is a sport, and what some other martial arts do is a science, and what some other martial arts do is something else. But Kung Fu is an art form. It's meant for self-defense. That's its main purpose. It comes from military times, and it's for, if you need be, killing people. Not for messing around, not for prolonging a fight, not for making money. And that's what it's for. It's mainly for your life and defense. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it made sense. And if not, maybe they can edit it to make sense. And we'll see you next time.